What does it mean to be a peacemaker? Maybe you have always thought it meant avoiding conflict at all costs. Not at all. Being a peacemaker requires walking straight into conflict differently. Peacemaking isn't about staying quiet. It's not about keeping everyone happy. It's definitely not about shrinking yourself.
Yeah, it's actually about staying steady when things get hard. It's choosing to slow down instead of escalate and to understand instead of defend, to say, help me understand what's happening for you when every part of us wants to react. Real peacemaking is strength. It's boundaries without hostility. It's truth without cruelty. It's compassion without losing yourself. And here's the powerful part. Peace doesn't start out there. It starts inside of us.
If you want to learn how to build emotional safety in your relationships instead of fear, this episode is for you.
Do you sometimes feel lost in your relationships, your identity, or even your spirituality? Welcome to Gilmore&green, where healing and hope meet.
We are marriage and family therapists and relationship experts who care deeply about helping you grow, strengthen your relationships, and deepen your sense of meaning and spirituality.
We long to share from our clinical experience, years of training and solid research, including ideas about how to strengthen the things that matter the most to all of us in life.
We're so glad you're here. Our hope is to share simple, meaningful ideas that support you in your healing and in your growth. Welcome to Gilmore&green, where healing and hope meet. Today, we're talking about something that feels especially needed right now, what it really means to be a peacemaker. When we hear the word peacemaker, we might picture someone calm, agreeable, maybe even someone who avoids conflict at all costs. But true peacemaking isn't passive. It's not pretending that everything is fine, and it certainly isn't shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable. Peacemaking is courageous, it's relational, and it begins inside of us.
It's often misunderstood, peace, as the absence of tension. But in families and in marriages and workplaces and even inside our own hearts, conflict is inevitable. So being a peacemaker doesn't mean avoiding hard conversations. It means entering them and navigating them. A peacemaker is someone who slows down instead of escalates. Often when we're in distress, we pick up speed, our emotions take over so quickly. And I love this word, they hijack us, right? That's exactly what happens is they hijack us into further distress and contention. So a peacemaker, they seek understanding before defending. I like to say the three most powerful words are help me understand. We say this a lot, but it's such an important phrase to use. So that request, when we can say that instead of escalating to people, it actually neutralizes any tension in the conversation. And the person who's feeling the most contentious can now feel seen and so much safer in this process.
That's right. This episode is actually influenced by some conversations that I've had with others, just asking them the question, what does it mean to be a peacemaker? And the variety of answers that I received, we're going to be talking about some of those today. And it's fascinating to know the perspective of many. In fact, some of them said, oh, I've never thought of that. Really, a peacemaker stays emotionally present when it would be easier to withdraw. Now, assuming the role of a peacemaker requires patience and courage to not dive into a great debate or argument, peace isn't built by pretending conflict doesn't exist. It's actually built by learning how to move through conflict without destroying connection. Peacemaking, actually, we're going to use a lens of attachment for a minute. From the attachment perspective, most conflict isn't about the surface issue. It's about safety, emotional safety. When someone raises their voice, shuts down, criticizes, or becomes controlling suddenly, there's usually fear driving that energy. It's fear of not being valued or respected. Maybe it's fear of being rejected, abandoned, or a fear of losing connection.
Yeah, and I'm going to say something to add to that that's going to sound so simple, and this is so powerful that as a peacemaker, one of the most critical things we can do is to look beyond someone's behavior, right? And ask ourselves, what is the hurt underneath this reaction? Like you just said, Debbie, there's a fear of being rejected, abandoned, fear of losing connection. And it's so hard when things escalate to step around that and say, what is the hurt behind this reaction? What attachment need is this person trying to protect? I mean, this suggestion alone as a peacemaker, I think is so fundamentally powerful.
Yes, as you are talking about this, I'm thinking how much humility and patience this takes. It's looking at humans differently. In fact, when we suggest this to our clients, it's something they'd never thought of before. Oh, it's not that my partner is a monster. My partner is hurting inside. It transforms how we see others.
Really does. Yeah, and it requires some things to do that, right? It requires slowing down. First of all, we got to catch that initial reaction so that we can gain insight and we can actually uncover the other person's true feelings and beliefs. So peacemaking like this shifts us from the mindset of me versus you to us versus the fear. And that in and of itself can instantly shift the relationship into a more collaborative one. It's actually magic to be able to do this for someone. It de-escalates things so quickly to step around that initial response from someone when they're in distress and say to yourself, what's the hurt behind that? And how can I see that and address that? It's truly magical.
And it's such a compassionate view, but it's not easy. It requires internal work. Before we can create peace around us, we really have to cultivate it within us. And what that means is learning to manage our own emotions, recognize them, and learn how to regulate our nervous system, our brain. It means recognizing within ourselves our own fight, flight, freeze, or please responses. This process really does involve pausing. I've been still looking for that pause button. It doesn't exist on Amazon, but I just want one sitting on my desk where I can press pause every once in a while. But pausing when we feel triggered instead of reacting on autopilot. Peacemaking isn't primarily a relational skill, but it is an internal discipline. Now, let me say that again. It's not just about interactions, it's internal discipline within ourself. It's looking within introspectively before we can calm a room or soothe a conflict or repair a rupture. We really have to learn to regulate ourselves.
I want to build on that. It's such an important skill, isn't it?
Mhm.
Because every single one of us has a nervous system that reacts automatically when we feel threatened. I mean, that's the beauty of a nervous system is it protects us, but it can also get in the way. So we want to stress again what our nervous systems do so quickly and easily. Some of us will go into fight, and when that fight response happens in us, we can get sharp and critical and intense. Some of us go into the fight mode. We all know this, but we can change the subject. We get busy, we deflect. Some of us go into a freeze mode, we shut down, we get quiet, we disconnect. And some of us go into please mode. We start to smooth things over and try to avoid the tension. We manage and rescue and do things like that. So a good peacemaker learns to notice this impulse in ourselves without immediately obeying them. We can learn to pause, to breathe, and to recognize, okay, my body's feeling threatened right now, but I don't have to attack. I don't have to disappear. I don't have to shut down. I don't have to smooth things over. It's that beautiful pause place, right? Where we catch ourselves in what the hijack does so quickly and really be more intentional about this self-regulation that we're talking about.
Yeah, that self-regulation requires self-discipline and self-awareness. That pause really can be powerful, even transforming. It interrupts the cycle, and peace begins in that space between the trigger and the response. It's a more disciplined way of handling ourselves and handling our interactions with others. It's also important to own our own, we're going to call it emotional landscape. It requires, as I said, self awareness. Peacemaking requires deep self awareness and insight into our own emotions and what drives them. Now, here's some examples of questions that can start your pondering and discovering process. What wounds do I carry into this moment? Or what story am I telling myself about this conflict, the meaning I'm giving it? Or what am I most afraid of losing right now? What's that catastrophe that drives my reaction? Most emotional escalation isn't about the current moment. It really is more about the influence of old wounds being scraped in the present and old unresolved pain being activated. A peacemaker doesn't deny their own hurt and look the other way, but they also don't project it onto others. Peacemakers take responsibility and accountability for their internal experience instead of making someone else carry it. This is the best way to describe and understand emotional maturity. It's about pointing the finger to us rather than pointing the finger to the person in front of us.
Oh, Debbie, I love those questions you just suggested. It's complicated, right? This place of conflict in our lives, it is so complicated because it does involve old wounds and narratives. And so I love the questions you just suggested for us to think about. Another thing that we know about peacemaking is that we have to learn to tolerate discomfort. So many people avoid conflict. We all try to avoid conflict, not because we don't care about others, right? Because this discomfort feels, I love this word, intolerable. So think about it. When voices are raised, if there's an extended silence, if there's obvious disapproval, perceived disconnection, these things cause such extreme discomfort and actually trigger intense emotions within us. We know in our own work that if you grew up as a child in chaos, you may quickly overreact to tension. If you grew up with emotional distance, you have maybe the tendency to shut down quickly. And so, as we each immerse ourselves in the internal work of being a peacemaker, we're learning now to expand our window of tolerance. So, this means in that window, staying present when your heart races, to remain engaged when you want to withdraw, when you want to just run with all your heart. It takes practice, right? To stay steady and to stay there, not withdraw. And again, just holding steady when someone else is dysregulated, that's hard to do. But that calm in us, that ability to stay regulated when someone else is dysregulated, that's a powerful way, just that alone, to calm things down. That when they feel that you're regulated, it helps regulate them. It's a gift.
Oh, that's right. It is a gift. And, it does require this introspection about what did I experience in my earliest years that taught me, that instilled an alarm inside of me. And when that alarm goes off, can I slow down, recognize what's happening, and self-soothe maybe for a minute? If someone else, like you said, is dysregulated, to see that and to know I don't have to react, but I certainly do understand what's happening inside of me. Not perfectly, but intentionally. We want to do this because peace is built by people who can stay present with themselves and others amid tense moments. So, again, we're just talking about a higher law of emotion regulation, and it requires practice and cultivation. So, validation, let's talk about this word validation. It doesn't mean, yep, I agree with you. I will ignore my values and morals and what I stand so strong with. I'll just go with you. One of the deepest internal shifts is being able to tell yourself, I can be safe even when I disagree with someone. Many conflicts that come across escalate because disagreement feels like rejection if they disagree, or a threat to the relationship. Differences can feel like distance and inevitable disconnection, but a peacemaker learns to internally anchor themselves by saying, I can hold my position without attacking yours. I can listen without collapsing. I can speak truth without showing contempt. I am okay with differences.
I just love this concept. I was actually talking about it with my friends this morning. We literally had this conversation this morning about the skill of being able to validate people without agreeing. That's just such a hard concept for us as humans. We feel like we're abandoning ourselves or something. And so I just love this skill as a peacemaker. I can validate you. I can hold my position without attacking yours. All the things that you just said.
Mm.
I just love it. So, yeah, this kind of inner confidence and overall security now reduces defensiveness and invites dialogue, right? Which is what we really care about and want. And so to do that, we have to let go of our ego. Ooh, yikes. That's hard. I'm choking as I even say it because it's hard, but it requires us to release the need to win, right? It requires us to release the need to be right.
So, can I add something? So,
Yes.
ego
Yeah.
is different than self-worth. So, we want to distinguish that. Yes, this is difficult, but we can hold on to our value and how we see ourselves. But that ego tends to get in the way of always needing to be right or the best. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you made that distinction. That is important. But yeah, peacemakers have to let go of the need to have the last word, right? Not because the truth doesn't matter, because the connection matters more. I love that.
Yeah.
When we allow our ego to take hold, our emotions escalate. And when we can establish an attitude of humility, we de escalate the emotion. So peacemakers ask themselves, not can I be right, but what will preserve the relationship? Instead of thinking, how do I prove my point? What will allow me to be closer in this place that is so deeply upsetting and confrontational? And that shift changes the emotional climate in our relationships, and it paves the way to have much richer and more rewarding conversations. It's miserable to be in conflict, right? Why would we want to stay there longer than needed? This is the shortcut to the place we both really want to be.
Yes, and there's a nuance about this that I want to point out. You mentioned asking what will preserve this relationship, and instead of how do I prove my point. But if we're wanting to preserve the relationship, it doesn't mean appeasing and giving up our stance. It means practicing, maybe in front of the mirror, saying, differences are okay. Oh, I can see that you see it that way. And that's okay. We can agree to see it differently and still be okay with each other. It does avoid the aftermath of conflict. Conflict and tension arises. But then when we smooth it over by saying, this is okay, it really is much more rewarding. So, choosing courage, actually, this is what it's about over control. True peace can't be forced. It's just not a forceful experience. It's not created by controlling others. No one wants to have their freedom taken away. No one. Or to be told how they feel or how they should feel or what to think or how to act. True peace isn't created by overpowering others emotionally. Peace is created by having the courage to say, oh, I was wrong. That hurt me. Or I really do want to understand. I'm still here. Peacemaking requires vulnerability, and we don't like that. Vulnerability can feel risky. According to Brene Brown, who is an expert on vulnerability and shame, vulnerability is also the birthplace of deeper connection.
I love her work. She's been so helpful in helping us understand this, but it is, as we've said, it's not easy work, right? This is not easy. This is AP, human relationship stuff. And so, especially if you tend to withdraw when things are hard or frustration comes quickly and easily to you, peacemaking requires this emotional tolerance and maturity. It asks us to lean into discomfort rather than shut down or lash out. Here's the beautiful truth about it, though, that peace grows in the smallest of moments. It really is one step at a time. You cultivate peace when you take a breath over responding or when you say, help me understand. Peace grows when you soften your tone. I mean, there's so many small micro steps that we take, right? When we stay present instead of shutting down or leaving emotionally, these are the kind of moments that build the safety that we're looking for. I love this idea of just micro moments. Yeah.
I think of world leaders and how often foreign policy and negotiating with each other to preserve lives, when they can look at the person across from them, across from the table, and say, what's missing for you? Help me understand. That instantly softens the experience. Now, war is about power and control. But peace, world peace, is about collaboration and connection. In an ideal world, that's how world leaders would respond. But as I think about the greatest world leaders, this is the strategies that they have used, and it's beautiful to witness. So, peacemaking is strength, not weakness. Sometimes we might think that peacemaking means giving in, giving up, or losing. But maybe you've always believed that peacemaking just involves allowing yourself to be walked on. Peacemaking actually requires great strength and emotional resilience. It requires setting very clear boundaries without hostility or aggression. It means assertiveness, not aggression. Peacemaking involves stating truth without blunt harshness or cruelty. Just assertively stating your truth is respectful and safe. True peacemaking involves compassion without self-abandonment or self-betrayal.
That last one really hits hard for me.
Mm.
Sometimes that's tricky. I love the way you said it, right? It involves compassion without self-abandonment or betrayal. And this is another important point about peacemaking is it doesn't mean that we silence our voices, right? Rather, it means that we use our voices wisely. I love that. Sometimes we do believe, as we've talked about, it means just being quiet and withdrawing and letting people walk all over us. That's not the way to peacemaking. It's not silencing our voice, it's using it wisely. And we don't want to hide from or avoid the truth, but we deliver it with care. We are steady when others are reactive. We're grounded when others are anxious. We're open when others are defensive. These are the kind of characteristics that make a true peacemaker. And I love this, a demonstration of strength. It is not weakness. It takes such strength to be able to do this. So, Debbie, I just want to talk a little bit too about the spiritual dimension of peacemaking. We love bringing spirituality into our podcast, and there really is something so spiritual and sacred about peacemaking. When we can choose connection over ego, when we can offer understanding over being right, when we can choose an attitude of softening over winning, we are actually participating in the process of healing. That's such a spiritual process, right? Peace spreads relationally. When one person can regulate their own emotions and controls their response to difficult things, others will see that and follow. It's a beautiful way to lead, right? This is actually spiritual leadership in all of this. It brings out the best in us. And when we refuse to escalate, we shift that cycle. We work every day in cycles. And these simple things alone can shift that cycle. So when we find the courage to be a peacemaker, it models for others a better way. It really is leadership and modeling in its highest form.
I want to continue just for a minute talking about the power of the Spirit. The Spirit is the greatest peacemaker of all. And when we bring that attitude with us, the Spirit will take hold and offer more strength and power of peace. So I have to live that way. I strive to live that way. I feel safest with those who bring a sense of the Spirit with them. It's just different. And it's just something that we don't actually have to do alone. With that companionship of that Spirit, we can do this. We can be a peacemaker and actually have others describe us that way. That's my hope, is that somehow I can convey a peacemaking attitude with respect. But keep in mind that we really don't have to fix everyone. In fact, we can't fix everyone. It isn't even our job. We don't have to carry every conflict. We don't have to walk into everyone, but we can choose the Spirit and bring it into the room. And that may be the most powerful offering from you and your gift to others. So, in the internal work of peacemaking, it's quiet, it's invisible, it's often even unnoticed. There are no accolades or applause. There may even be no recognition. But over time, peacemaking transforms relationships because emotionally regulated people regulate rooms, grounded people ground conversations, secure people create and cultivate safety. So, peace doesn't mean beginning with strategy and control. it begins with self-leadership, and that is work worth doing.
Yeah, I love that. And so we would love to invite you as you think about your relationships this week, maybe consider asking yourself, when am I most tempted to react instead of respond? In these moments when someone seems agitated or argumentative, is it possible that their harshness might be hiding hurt? And I'm going to say most of the time, yes.
Yeah.
And so what would it look like to bring steadiness into this moment? You know, again, we've talked about this. Peacemaking doesn't mean that your life will be conflict free, if that were only true, right? But a peacemaker means that you assume the role now of someone who builds safety instead of fear. You're someone who builds connection instead of division. And you're someone who offers repair instead of rupture. I love those.
Yeah, it's just like I said earlier, a higher level of living as a human. So it takes work. But the kind of peacemaking that we've outlined in this episode today can transform families. It can change and preserve marriages. We see that all the time in our work with couples. It changes the morale of the workplace and can bond you as a work family. Most importantly, peacemaking changes hearts, and it can all begin with you. So now we've arrived at our favorite place, Sharilyn. Therefore, what? And so I'm wondering what yours is as we've, thought about what we were talking about. There's several things that rise up for me. What about you?
You know, when you just said a minute ago that there's not accolades for this or applause, but I'm thinking about, I'll be honest, I've done this, I've reacted in ways that I'm disappointed in myself more often than not. But the times when I can implement these things that we're talking about, I'm thinking about the deep sense of personal, what's the word? Personal gratitude in myself. There's such a feeling inside of me that, wow, I was able to do that. That was hard. That was hard to respond differently than I maybe would have in the past. And that sense in myself of doing something different and doing something hard, I want to remember what that feels like when I do that well. It's such a motivating feeling for me. This inner, I don't know, this inner confidence that I showed up and I'm proud of the way that I showed up in an escalated, conversation. So I think that's my therefore what is to remember what that feels like when I can do it. I don't do it always, but I love that feeling of, wow, I was emotionally regulated. I offered the gift of healing rather than hurt to someone. And that feels so good inside to have been able to do that.
Oh,
That's it.
that's so beautiful. I love that. That inner confidence that you talked about actually is my therefore what. I have a passion for the topic of self-worth. And one thing that we do know from science is that the ones that are the most confident in the room tend to be even the quietest ones. And when we can generate that level of self-worth and value, we naturally become peacemakers because we don't have to create space for ourselves. There's room for everyone. So, this means being able to go on a journey of finding out who you really are, generate a higher level of self worth, and you will bring peace wherever you go. So, that's my therefore what. I'm going to continue to focus on understanding who I really am. And when I enter into that space with others, just that internal confidence and recognizing there's room for everyone that can always be improved. So, thank you so much for listening to our podcast today. We hope you'll continue to follow us.
Thank you. We love doing this. Thanks for being with us.